My name is Jonathan Banks, and I play Mike in the Netflix film El Camino. We're going to give you a little oral history about the film. And during this oral history, you'll hear from about 50 different people, actors, crew members, producers, speak throughout this. And here we are. And this is a scene that I'm in. I'm not that guy. I will be soon the other guy. Now, let me give you a brief history. It was so cold that Aaron and I could not stop shaking in this scene. Literally, it was, I don't know, 6:30, 6 in the morning, somewhere in there. Because I've discovered that anytime I work with Vince Gilligan absolutely makes me miserable. He either is freezing me or he has me in a desert at 110 and 114 degrees. If you look closely, I don't know, you might be able to see me shaking there. Anyway, another side note, I had just flown in. I just lost my house in the Malibu fires, and this is the first thing I'd done since then. And it was so good to be back. And it was a balm and a salve to be able to go back to work and be with Aaron. He's a rotten kid, but I love him anyway. So there you go. There it is. Have a good time, folks.
Alaska. It's the last frontier.
Greetings. My name is Dennis Milliken. I'm the transportation coordinator on El Camino. In this scene, you see us at the Rio Grande River, and in the background, you see two cars. The Mike car, which is the Chrysler, was the car from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. The Jesse Tercel, however, had to be recreated because Sony had auctioned off most of the cars that was used on Breaking Bad. The Tercel was one of the things that got sold off, so we had to recreate that. The guys did a great job of putting that together to match the Breaking Bad car. Now you see Jesse screaming at his release from the compound, and that's poor man's process, which is a thing that we do on stage in a controlled environment. We used a buck rig for that, which I'll describe and discuss a little bit later. These police lights that are coming up at you are supposed to also mimic what happened at the end of Breaking Bad. Vince's concern was that the light bars be the same so that anybody watching the two wouldn't know that they were different cars because you couldn't get the same cars back. The El Camino was also sold off at the end of Breaking Bad, so we had to recreate that totally. And we had a hero car, a double car, and the buck rig that I mentioned earlier. And here you see Jesse knocking over the mailbox, which he was supposed to do.
Hi guys, it's Lori McCoy Bell here, the department head hairstylist on El Camino. And I have to say what an honor it was to work with so many talented people. Vince and the actors were amazing. We have Skinny Pete here and Badger, which were a hoot and a half. We did have to match their hair. We gave Badger, a trim. He was kind of the same. We did add a little bit of wefts and stuff to Skinny Pete. You could see it sticking out of his hat a little bit, but we needed to get an exact match. We needed to believe that this was happening 2 years ago, basically, in storyline. They were great to work with. Really a family type atmosphere, It was nice to be part of that family. Looks like somebody's sneaking in that window there. Oh, look at that. It's Jesse. And Jesse was, again, one of the exact matches that we needed to do. This is directly after he escaped in the season finale. He ran to his buddy's house for protection or for help. So we had a wig on him. We've had several wigs in this film. We have about 7 wigs working on him alone. But this would be the longest version that we have of him. It's probably 5 inches long in total. And we took care of that hair by not taking care of it, actually. We ratted it up. We teased it. We put oil on it. We put gel on it. We tried to make it PC. And we actually laid the bangs in the exact same spot as we saw him leaving the compound after the shootout. We even had to shower with this wig, which is a tough one. Wigs aren't meant to get wet in the scene. It's a bit of a challenge. Some of the wigs that we had for different lengths during this show, we didn't have to use so much grease or gel. It was more a clean version. We had 7 wigs, so we had one that was about 1/4 of an inch long and up to 5 inches long. So all the stages in between that. The stage where he wore his shortest wig was the scene that he had with Jane out in the desert in the car. And kind of a difficult, tricky wig to do when you get it that short, not to see any of the underlying issues of the base of the wig. And Jane was great. We put a bang piece on her. She didn't have bangs anymore, but it was challenging and it was fun. We had a great time.
Hello, it's Christian Diaz de Bedoya, location manager for El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. We're looking at some beautiful time lapses we shot on the show from 9 Mile Hill in West Albuquerque, the current state of Saul Goodman's office, and the iconic Pollos Hermanos Twisters. And we're now looking at a shot that we had to do in pre-production in front of the federal courthouse downtown so that we could have that scene available for our 2 actors here, Skinny Pete and Badger, to watch the footage to help them with their performance and just to have real content on the screen while we were filming this scene. And now we're in Skinny Pete's house, which was a new location for us in the Breaking Bad world, where we find our 2 iconic characters here. And one thing about this location was this house was actually a lot nicer and cuter when we discovered it, and we had to bring it down quite a bit. Our art department and production design team had to scruff it up more than it was in actuality. So this also carries us into the 1-bedroom set that complemented our location, which was actually shot on stage, where we're seeing Jesse wake up from a long sleep and staring up through the grates of the old Nazi compound where he was prisoner for so long, which was actually another set we had to build for the movie because the original location had gotten leveled many years ago once we wrapped Breaking Bad. But this house, Skinny Pete's house, took a couple of weeks to find, and Vince definitely picked the right one. The way it laid out in the movie gave us a lot of vantage points and very creative ideas of how to shoot it with everything going on in and outside the house.
I'm Louise Frogley. I'm the costume designer. This is Donna.
Hi, I'm Donna Casey, costume supervisor. We had a great time working together on this project.
I know, I love all of the series, so it was a great honor to be able to do it and meet everyone and research the clothes and try and recreate them, because mostly they didn't exist anymore. So we had to recreate, and every little last detail, like
starting from scratch.
Yeah, to try to do it from continuity notes and to do it from footage.
Right, I remember you wanted to make sure the knit on Skinny Pete's hat matched exactly.
He very kindly pointed out that it didn't, so we did, so we just did it again, and then we had to recreate the eagle on the front. And the point is, it all looks incredibly ordinary and crummy, but in order to get to that, there's so many stages: researching, buying the fabric, finding the person to cut and fit it, and
give it that lived-in look.
The aged dyer, so you end up with a totally boring, ordinary garment, which has, it might just as well be by Dior or someone by the time you spent all the money on it making it.
But we beat it to death with lots of washing and aging and dyeing just to give it the aged, lived-in look.
Hi, this is Sherry Montesano. I was the head of makeup and makeup effects at El Camino. This ended up being one of the most challenging and fun jobs of my entire career. What I thought was going to be just a continuation of Breaking Bad ended up being just an array of the most fun makeups I've done. I had to hand lay a beard on Aaron Paul, who plays Jesse Pinkman. This had to withstand a fire hydrant being blasted in his face and a shower. Not only did we do that, we had to do all these prosthetics to show his journey through what happened at the end of Breaking Bad. We hand drew his tattoo. We had to keep resetting all of the dirt for take after take. Not only that, he was in a hot shower for many, many hours. It's kind of the way we get the prosthetics off. It was a nail biter. The fun thing about this show, though, is Aaron was up for this. He was up for me touching up that beard constantly. We had to be very careful in patting him dry because we didn't want to rub anything off. But one of the best things about this whole thing is we got to be able to create what Jesse Pinkman looked like after his journey at the end of Breaking Bad. The scars that I created for him were to show the pain and suffering he went through, but also we didn't want him to look monstrous. He's our leading man. He had to look heroic, which he was. And just look at how Aaron Paul, playing Jesse Pinkman, looks in this. Awesome.
I gotta get out of here.
Hi guys, this is Mark Hansen, the prop master from El Camino. The phone book that Jesse is opening up, that looks like a nice simple shot, but I'll tell you what, that was by far one of the most complicated things to do. Phone books don't exist anymore. During Breaking Bad, it was a little easier because they were still around. They sort of have fallen off the face of the earth as far as I can tell. But I was able to locate 4 phone books from Albuquerque from that time period. All the pages are created because you have to clear the phone numbers, the names of the companies, the addresses. So those are all the pages are absolutely put together by us. Alan Chow, our graphics guru, was very instrumental in making all that happen as well. He actually tears a phone book page out, and that's a huge deal because when you tear a page, that's one take. So to be able to reinsert an untorn page becomes a huge process. But that's doing props. That's how you do it. You just you got to realize it's going to be not one take, not 2 takes. So I think we were prepared for probably 25 takes of him tearing the page.
Hi, I'm John Wildermuth. I was the first assistant director on El Camino. This is actually a little 2-wall set on a soundstage, and the element of the junkyard is a green screen outside the window. And we even did a CG window as we pulled back, so it looked like it was starting outside and coming in. Here we are at Skinny Pete's house. This neighborhood was an amazing place to shoot, but also very challenging because we were shooting scenes in the front and the backyard and looking in all directions. So with our limited light hours in Albuquerque in November, we would come in the dark, super early in the morning, unload all our gear, just stash it away in the backyards, and so that we could shoot in any direction throughout the day. This scene in the backyard with old Joe searching the car for a low jack, we were scheduled to shoot this, do some coverage on Vince's shot plan, but because of our limited time with the light, he ended up abandoning that plan and just composing a 1-shot take to cover the whole scene. That's why the light is so beautiful there, you see, in the scene, because it's very late in the day. It was such an honor to work on this film. I love Breaking Bad, the series, and to get a chance to work with Vince and these actors and this amazing crew, many of whom were on the series and on Better Call Saul. It was just definitely one of the highlights of my career. Out here in the front yard again, you see that window in the background behind Jesse's head. That's actually the garage of the house. And we put a plug in there to make it look like it was another room. It was quite challenging scheduling this movie because there's so many parts to it. And I really wanted to give Vince the opportunity to shoot things in continuity as much as possible. It also works great for the actors, but it does become a challenge when you've got multiple cast members and locations and storylines to tell, but it was quite a great experience, and again, highlight of my career.
Keys!
Yo, I'm Charles Baker. I play Skinny Pete.
Matt Jones, and I played Badger. Look at that. A lot goes into these scenes of snap with your left hand, hand the keys with your right hand. I hand the keys with that right hand. You hand it with your right hand.
Yeah, it was choreography between the keys and the money and all of it, and then all of that in between, trying to remember this like paragraph or two of dialogue where you guys are just onomatopoeing in between, like yeah. Like, oh man.
And also all of us getting over the weirdness of being back into these characters in Albuquerque.
Right. I don't know if I told you this. I looked up when we were driving to set. I looked up, like it seemed familiar, and I lived in New Mexico when I was eight years old, and in Albuquerque. And so we're driving to set, it seemed real familiar. So I just Googled my old elementary school. We were like literally 3 blocks away from where I used to live when I was 8 years old.
That's insane.
And it was pretty wild. We're like, this is why this place looks familiar. But I had never actually been to this part of Albuquerque where we're shooting, despite being 3 blocks away. I was 8, so I mean, I didn't get around much.
Look at that. Big old stack of fake money with real money on the outside. Good old prop trick. Oh God. Okay, this shot.
I love this shot.
Like 22 takes.
22 takes, yes, dude. It was worth it. I mean, I love the ingenuity behind that pull in and pull back, and there was a lot of technical stuff in there.
Camera, but there's this giant crane arm thing hanging off the left side of the car. And if that car wasn't so old and shitty and heavy, the car would have flipped over. And they're like, hey, just hop in here and pull out and start the car and do all that stuff while this $100,000 camera's hanging off the left side. And then stop in the perfect place where the light hits Aaron's face and makes him look so pretty.
Yeah, that was very important. And like when we had to lean in and make sure, like over lean in so that we can see your face. Like,
yeah, and I had to turn my face but not too much so you can still see my face.
You can't just lean in naturally. You got to lean in, like really lean in.
And then my character drives straight to Carl's Jr. before going to Mexico. So.
I told you straight, damn it, dude.
Hold up.
I love this scene. First time ever seeing Skinny Pete without his hat on.
This is my favorite Skinny Pete moment of the series.
I think it's everybody's favorite Skinny Pete moment of the series. It's the first time you ever see Skinny Pete without a hat, which I thought was significant. And of course, I couldn't have like a cool haircut or anything. I had to have that. I almost cried when I read this. Okay, I cried when I read this. And then I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get through it without like tearing up. But turns out I did.
I didn't get to watch this until I saw it at the premiere, because I was down the street in the car while you guys were shooting it.
Right. Driving away.
Yeah.
This scene right here, this was the only one take shot, I think, in the movie. We did that whole thing, me dragging the tarp, getting into the El Camino, and doing that little bit. That was all one take. And then we did several takes of me driving that thing. Oh God, that fence, man. They had me test that fence out first. And like said, okay, we just need you to pick it up and see if you can, how you can move it. Like I couldn't even budge it. It was like a ton. They're like, okay, we'll make it way less. And they brought it down a little bit, still couldn't lift it. And it ended up being like mostly just balsa wood at the end. It's just like, it was light as a feather. It was like a kite. Like, oh man, now I have to pretend it's heavy. It's pretty fun.
All those cops on the way to get Badger and Skinny Pete.
Oh man, I saw that and I was like, oh, I'm ready for that scene. We shot a scene where they all actually come in and bust in, and I'm smoking a joint, and like they'd throw a flashbang down and have me get on the ground and handcuff me. And obviously for time and for story purposes, they decided to cut that out of the original.
Hi, I'm re-recording mixer Larry Benjamin, and this is my partner, re-recording mixer Kevin Valentine.
Hello.
Hey, Kevin. Hi. So when we were mixing the scene, we had the opportunity to mix it in theatrical Atmos. And this scene in particular, this pit, this flashback scene to the pit, lent itself really, really well to do some unique, discrete things with the Atmos channels. And Kevin, you can talk about what you did with effects, and I matched what you did in terms of treatment with reverbs and such. But down here, I mean, you've got like water dripping. What other kinds of elements did you have rolling here? Effects?
Yeah, we had I had like an eerie wind, and even though there probably wasn't any there, and the flapping of the tarp, which was a combination of Foley and effects, but it was just fabulous.
Yeah.
And the drips were effects. And I think Larry and I kind of matched a small verb to emulate that cement box he's in.
Exactly. We want to kind of make it seem like he was a little bit more enclosed than the set would show. But Jesse is down there, is getting blinded by the light as Todd pulls the tarp back. But Todd was above him, and visually that lent itself well to really utilizing Atmos in a really great way. So, and Vince was at first not sold on this, but what we did is we put Todd completely up in the ceiling speakers because he's physically above Jesse, and then Jesse is coming out of the center speaker. And I love the way this is framed. The way we see Todd is just kind of like through the bars, and there's Jesse below. So here's an example of where Todd is strictly coming out of the upper speakers, the ceiling speakers in Atmos, and Jesse is in the center speaker. And then what I did is, as Todd would talk to Jesse, I kind of ramped in and out of the reverb to make it sound like he was, just above, outside of the real world, and then talking through the pit, where we put some of that reverb on it. And Kev, you can talk about this wonderful Foley.
Yes, it was great. The Foley team did such a fabulous job on this. The cigarette being hoisted down on that string, not only was the clip Foley, but also they did a channel of the string rubbing on the bars, and obviously it wouldn't make quite that much sound, or practically any sound, but it sounded so beautiful and realistic as he's going up and down. I watched it this morning. It just made my morning just to see that.
Yeah, there's so many details, and Foley really plays like another role in the film. But this is that example that I was talking about. So, Todd keeps kind of panning his head off, from talking outside into the exterior of the world and then down into the pit. And then I kind of varied the amount of reverb based on the positioning of him. And then when we cut to Todd, then I kind of centered him up and had him in the same center space as Jesse. But I really wanted to kind of sell the superiority of Todd where he was physically over Jesse. We got to utilize that Z-axis that Dolby Atmos exploits, kind of that three-dimensional height aspect of things.
And what was interesting, Larry, I know that we panned everything as we saw it on the screen, panning-wise, left, right, up, and down. But even though we had them in the same locations, something had to do with the dialogue and mostly the Foley, where sometimes it didn't seem like it was in the same world. So I know we had to adjust out of what we did in our pre-dub just so they felt like they were in the same world, because sometimes they didn't.
You're exactly right. Yeah, it would seem a little disembodied, even if we were synchronized in terms of our cuts and when we would do things, but we had to, when we married up together, make sure that things sounded, kind of glued together. And I remember Vince, we were mixing this on a big theatrical stage, and Vince would kind of get up out of where he was sitting, which was just directly right behind us, kind of sit from our position, go to the back, and then realize, okay, this is working. I'm not sold on it, but I think it's working. So yeah, it was kind of fun.
Can you believe that he lived down there for all those months? I'm Louise, this is Donna, we're back, hello.
And there comes Jesse, finally out of the hole.
So nightmarish. And that top he had on, we had to have it made because it didn't exist anymore, and it had to have different stages of aging because we couldn't wash it. He had 4 or 5 for each stage of aging, which all had numbers in, so we knew which stage it was, so the costumers would get the right one on the actor.
And this was his dirtiest stage.
Yeah, it was. It's fairly
because he's
horrible.
been down in the hole.
Yeah. And the thing about this is you can't wash them at the end of the day. You have to keep each garment, each stage of aging exactly as it is. So poor Aaron had to wear very smelly stuff, though we sprayed them a lot.
But luckily we had multiples so that he could have a fresh, customized dirty
we had about
shirt.
14 of those, didn't we? So there'd be like 4 of each stage so that he wouldn't be too smelly.
It was great.
Yeah, it was fun.
We had a good team.
My name is Ara Kinikin, VFX supervisor at Rodeo for El Camino. So in this scene, you're going to notice that we have the compound background behind Jesse as he's opening the fence. What we did for this sequence, since the compound itself is a long lost location, it doesn't exist anymore, we built the fence and the foreground dirt and part of the road on set, like behind the studio in the backlot, basically, with a giant green screen behind. And then we completely built digitally the compound behind Jesse and Todd. We were there on set and we took a lot of measurements because Jesse and Todd were in front of a green screen with the fence and the partial road that was built. So we took the green screen out and replaced it with the fully digital compound behind our fantastic actors.
I'm Andrew Smith. I was the gaffer on El Camino. We shot in Albuquerque. And here we are in the basement of Todd's house. As you can see, it's a day interior.
There used to be water.
We added the glares that are on the wall on either side because it's a very dark basement. Even though it's pretty bright outside, we added light outside to give you some kind of glare on the wall inside. Otherwise, it would feel pretty lifeless in there. Even though it, should be lifeless because it's Todd's place. Here's the truck cap, which was a great prop, bad for the actors because it's really hard to get through that doorway. And fortunately, we never shot them getting it out that doorway. And then putting the cap back on the El Camino, it's a little bit of a dance because it took a little while to get it sort of into place. One of my favorite scenes in the movie takes place in Todd's apartment when Casey discovers Jesse under the mattress. And it required quite a bit of coordinated movement between myself and Paul, the operator, because he had to move the camera in and I had to light him at the same time. And it basically came down to revealing the muzzle of the gun first so that the movement would draw your eye from the gun to his face. So in the next shot, you'll see when he is parked under the bridge in the Fiero, you will see in the wider shot, we had street lamps and we added those street lamps. The art department was great. They carried them around and they placed those street lamps wherever we want. So in this shot, specifically, what I pay attention to is the light in his right eye. We're always trying to get a little bit of wrap on him, which that's what we call the fill. He's keyed from the camera right side. And basically everything you're seeing in the background there was practical, meaning it was there. It's a train yard in Albuquerque. And you can see the street lights we placed. Actually, if you look, you'll see there's two of them on the right side of frame. One we put there and one exists there. They're right next to each other. And in this frame, you'll see the street light comes on. And of course, that's an electrician magically turning the street light on in Vince's direction. The color temperature you see inside the car is sodium vapor, something we add to the light because it gives it that industrial look.
Hi, I'm Melissa Ng and I'm Vince Gilligan's assistant. I love the street sign in this shot. It's a shout out, Holly and a Rose, to Holly Rice, Vince's longtime partner and the coolest girl in the world. A piece of trivia is that I got to do what I thought was a temp voice in the earlier press conference scene, but ended up staying in the movie, so thanks, Vince. This shot that's coming up was originally supposed to be a Steadicam shot. Our brilliant A-camera operator, Paul, shot this, but the Alexa 65 camera that we were using was so heavy, it was hard to keep up with Aaron running across the street. So we ended up using a contraption with two big wheels called a rickshaw that Paul rode while he operated the camera, and our great grip Eli steered for him. This is the actual apartment building location. We rebuilt Todd's hallway on set and Todd's apartment, but all of these stair shots are in the actual location. Vince does a ton of preparation and homework. This shot right here through the stairs was something he had pre-planned. When we were scouting the location, he likes to take a lot of photos and place people where he might want them in frames. The plants on this floor were already in the building, but the plants on this floor were placed by our art department. so that there could be a ficus right where Vince had written it to be. Because this is the actual location, we couldn't really move much around, so Paul was jammed into a corner with his camera, and he was the one cueing Tom to come down the hallway. I remember Vince walking through with Tom to show him kind of the pacing that it would take to get down the hall and give Aaron enough time to break in. The amazing Aaron Paul obviously couldn't see Tom, so he had to really just find his rhythm and pace it out so that he could make it inside just in time. Our video village was located right behind this door in this apartment that Jesse's breaking into, so we were all there at the monitors, holding our breaths each time with Jesse and hoping that he would make it just in time.
Hi, this is Mark Johnson. I'm one of the producers of El Camino. Charles Neuwirth, another one of the producers I've known for 30 years. Melissa Bernstein, another producer I've known for 15 years. And then there's Vince Gilligan, the producer-director, who I've also known for some 30-odd years. The irony is, here we are making a feature together, which is what I wanted to do with Vince 30 years ago when I met him in Richmond, Virginia. His dream then was to write and direct features. Television wasn't in the card, certainly not at that point. And here we are finally making a feature, Vince's first feature, after having become probably one of the, if not the most accomplished and lauded television creators, really ever. And TV schedules are so jam-packed. And not that feature schedules are that much easier, but you do have more time. And we say in theory that you need to get about 2 minutes of usable film every single shooting day. Vince's inclination was to move faster. And not that I told him to be lazy, but I did tell him, take your time, make sure you've got it right. And the same thing applies, quite frankly, in the editing room, because you don't just cut it in 2 or 3 weeks and walk away. You take months. And this movie just got better and better. I have to say, a lot of my notes probably had to do with feature expectations. And, as I said to Vince constantly, a lot of your audience for this movie will not be that familiar with the show, if at all. And he originally said, but I'm making it for the people who love the show. And I said, no, you're making it for a lot of people who don't know what they're about to watch and find it entirely enjoyable. And that's what we ended up doing. But I think my notes, which probably frustrated him both in the development stage and in the editorial stage, had to do with don't assume that your audience knows who these characters are or what's going on. And I couldn't have been more aware of it than when we did this particular scene. I don't know what it is about this scene that triggered that, but I kept on saying, oh my God, we're making a feature. Vince Gilligan is directing a feature. And it's so quintessential Vince Gilligan. Here we have this black humor moment. We have the belt that Jesse Plemons' character was using to strangle his housekeeper, and he's putting it back on to hold up his pants. So, God forbid anything should be out of order.
This is Judy Ree. I'm the production designer on El Camino, and I have some thoughts I'm going to share with you about Todd's apartment. When I first read the script, it was, I was very excited to do his living space because we haven't seen it before, and he's such an interesting character. So aside from Candy Welding and a couple of other sets, this was the one that I was most excited about. Todd is a very unique character because he's a combination of a Boy Scout sociopath. And although he has this sunny and respectful demeanor on the surface, who wants to please and do a good job for his employers, he's also this cold-blooded killer that does whatever needs to be done to fulfill his duties. And, as Vince once said in one of our discussions about who Todd is and what we wanted to show in his space, that he is someone who wouldn't think twice about helping a little old lady cross the street, which is very funny because that's exactly who he is. And, but we also know that he has this other sinister side. So, in thinking about what his space needs to look like, to show both the contradictions of his personality and also in keeping with who he is without it being too over the top was an interesting challenge. And in thinking about his space, I started to explore those kinds of themes of things that were sunny and cheerful. Like for me, it was elementary schools and classrooms and Easter eggs and Disneyland. And also the other elements that I wanted to sort of convey was sort of male adolescence that he has. It's once again reflects a version of Arrested Development. And also, Todd has money at this point. So, how has he spent his money and what did he buy for himself? And so, all those things needed to be shown in his space and in the most subtle and layered way possible. That was an interesting challenge as well. The pegboard that you saw in his kitchen cabinet doors, that was a direct link for me in terms of memory to childhood classrooms of elementary schools. So I brought that layer into his kitchen. The Easter egg colors, I started to think about his palette and what would be representative in his space, starting with his sort of more open public space of when you first walk in, which would be his kitchen, his living room, and his den, to maybe express more of the pause Easter egg dies that you used to get in grocery stores. And once again, that is a memory from my childhood, as well as from Disneyland. I remember there was this ride called It's a Small World, but that dining room or the kitchen bench and table that has the Bavarian cutout motif somehow was lifted from that memory for me. So those were different elements that I discussed with Vince, and he liked the idea of the pause colors, the pastels, and then it's starting to get darker as you move down the hallway into his bedroom, and his bedroom would then reflect a darker inner life. And that was a reference from anatomical medical charts that Vince also really liked. And we get to see that at some point in when Jesse explores Todd's bedroom. You'll also see his snow globes, which we started to discuss with, with Vince and Trina and Mark Hansen in the prop department of what would his personal hobbies be in his private time. What does Todd do to relax when he's at home? And so this was actually Vince's idea to the snow globes and how those inner workings of each snow globe would reflect a kind of a darker, slightly comical, but definitely Black humor version of who Todd is. And then the scorpion chair was a reference that Vince had found that really spoke to him. So we had that fabricated as well, as you'll see in one of the shots kind of in the background. It's not heavily featured, but you do see it.
Nobody would ever find it. Nothing beats cash on hand.
Hi there, this is Skip McDonald. I'm the editor from the movie, and I just wanted to run through the sequence a little bit with you to give you some different insight on how things were played out here. This is shortly after Jesse gets into Todd's apartment and discovers he needs to find Todd's new secret hiding place, and he has no idea where it could be. So he is slowly, methodically looking, and he's trying to do it by very little light here. And I believe this lighter wasn't an actual butane lighter. They had to run a tube to it, so he had a little more time rather than having to keep the butane going the whole time. Here, he's going through Todd's room, and I tried to make it feel like he had a pattern that he was going through with the room, searching from one side to another, so he wasn't jumping from place to place here, and kind of had where he was going and what he'd already looked at. In here, I'm sure you're going to recognize this is the same tarantula from the series Breaking Bad, so kind of a throwback to there. And in here, he's just looking, and he's all the detail that's here, the glove and the little Post-it notes and stuff. And here he's continuing to look because he had stored the meth in the underneath the sink, so I'm sure that's a reason he's back here looking on this. As he crawled under the sink, he bumped into some of the plumbing, and there was a slight jiggle, so that was something we needed to freeze so it didn't feel like it was going to fall apart or give you the vision that it was cheaply done. and just trying to make sure he doesn't overlook anything and just methodically go through. The later montage you'll see later is very hectic and chaotic, where this is just, I'm going to find something, I don't know where to look, so I'm going to tear everything apart. This is a section here where I had reverse printed some pieces to make it feel a little more lengthy, and this was a tricky section to cut because it was just trying to decide when do we reveal the actual parents on the TV, which was a sequence that we had to pre-cut so we could play it back on the day so we didn't have to burn it in or anything. And as you see, he finally realizes his parents are there. He's coming in here, flipping through the channels, which was also a pre-build, so we could have the flashes and no audio and all that kind of stuff going through that would be built later. So he finally tunes into it, and just watching the parents, their heartbreak, trying to get Jesse to turn himself in, come home, and everything's going to be okay kind of a thing. But this was a delicate balance for me to make sure that we see the parents and how distraught they are, but then also see the heartbreak on Jesse when he's listening to what they have to say and trying to decide what he should do or how he should get into this. But it was really fun to cut this because of the emotion of both sides, but trying to make sure we played it in the right sequence of events and the right amount of time on both sides to see all of their emotion.
Hello, this is Philip Palmer, and I'm the sound mixer on El Camino. There's not a lot of dialogue in this section, but a great track of music from Dr. Hook. Vince wrote a giant cigar inching into view. It's pretty cringeworthy when the rolled up body hits the pavement. I love the shot from the cab looking back when the music starts and they chuck the shoe and the body into the back. We cut here to the Painted Desert. We left Albuquerque for a couple of days and moved the company to Arizona. Jesse Plemons is really comfortable with singing and had prepared to sing the song live. I put an earpiece, we call them earwigs, in his off-camera ear. That's his right ear. When Vince gave the cue, I hit play and fed it to Jesse like he was listening to the radio. It was as if it was his favorite song. We only had to do it a couple of times from the tow rig. That's when we're towing the car and Jesse. And once free driving, that's when Jesse was driving it himself. The hand gestures out the window are perfect.
Sharing the night together, whoa, yeah, sharing the night.
The shot where Aaron Paul is riding in the back of the Elko was filmed nearly at the end of our production, on stage back in Albuquerque. It was a collaboration of all departments to make it work. Special effects had to make the vehicle rock back and forth and appear to turn. Props had to make items soft so they didn't injure Aaron in any way. There were moving lights to give the illusion of movement. There's an outtake somewhere of Aaron singing along.
Hi, I am Diane Mercer. I'm the executive producer of the movie, and I also am the post-producer. And with me is...
I'm Joey Reinisch, first assistant editor.
And Joey, I think you and I both have great love for this scene in the movie.
This scene is my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Is it really? Why is that?
For sure. This scene to me has everything that Breaking Bad had in it. In just like
totally
one
agree.
Consolidated, condensed bit. You have this like amazing dark comedy that Vince can do. And then it goes into the conversation. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but the conversation between Jesse and Todd, where the conversation isn't even really anything they're actually saying. It's all subtext and all this hidden meaning behind that whole end conversation.
Yes.
Rambling way to describe it, but
no, that's absolutely, I totally agree. I mean, it's literally like a little microcosm of all of Breaking Bad in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Because it starts with these beautiful vistas, beautiful widescreen desert vistas with the, the colors of the desert and the colors of the sky. And then it drills down into this really intimate, awkward, funny, ultimately tragic scene between two characters, one of whom barely says anything.
Yeah.
Nicely.
This spot in particular right here, I don't think ever did not get a laugh.
Right.
Even when we were like cutting it, seeing it for the 10th time,
Yes.
it's just so uncomfortable. Like you just
And
can't
I
stand
can
it.
absolutely attest to it, because I think I've actually seen this movie more than even you. At least
I think so,
the finished version of it. And yeah, I laugh every time he asks Jesse if he wants to say a few words.
Say it. No.
And just the way he says no, and just like the fact that he has the like wherewithal to say no in that moment.
It's just this is a Jesse who has just sort of accepted what life is, and I think that's what makes this moment so amazing to me.
Yes.
Is that it's one of the few times when he's with Todd that you see past the hardened like callous, and he's just so broken. And it's like the only time he lets it show that it just hits so much harder than pretty much any of the other Todd stuff. And it's like funny along the way. And Todd is, Jesse Plemons is awesome, but it's so just good. Like here you remember Jesse, the character, and just how destroyed he is at this point.
Yeah. And you have to see this moment where, I mean, he is literally given in this moment an almost guaranteed shot at freedom, and he can't take it.
He can't take it.
And, I mean, the Nazis are away for the whole weekend. He knows that. He knows where the money is.
He just has so little confidence that nothing has gone right so far.
He's so broken, and his brain is so he's been so manipulated over the course of these months in captivity that he just doesn't even have the strength to do it. And it hurts so much for him, because we, the audience, obviously we know what else is coming, and it's and obviously Aaron Paul's so unbelievably great in this scene. And I think Vince actually said, I think that one shot where he cries, where the one tear falls, I swear Vince said it literally every take was the exact same moment when the
I
tear,
remember him talking about that. It's
when the
so
tear
incredible.
fell. I mean, that's how good Aaron Paul is, and how in the moment he is as an actor, and it's just so heartbreaking to see him go through all of this. And right here too, like this is so perfect Todd, the pathos of Todd right here.
And to what you were saying earlier, even thinking of this scene, I didn't realize how little Jesse actually speaks. Jesse, the character.
Yeah.
Like it's Aaron just communicating with body language, and you just feel it.
Yeah. I mean, he has one word.
Yeah.
One word. It's such a great scene.
Hi, this is Jason Trigo Newman. I'm the music editor for El Camino. This is the second Jesse searching sequence, and we wanted to make sure it felt quite different than the first. We wanted to get into Jesse's head with the music. The music supervisor, Thomas Gullovich, and myself went through hundreds of tracks looking for the perfect one. We pitched 12 of the strongest songs to Vince. He listened to all of them and then came back to us and said, what if we combined version 8, which was Curzon by Dem Dyke Stare, and version 11, which was Spiky by Red Snapper. What if we played those on top of each other at the same time? Now, these are 2 tracks by 2 different bands, have no relation to each other, but I've learned in my career to try every crazy idea that comes my way, because you never know which one's going to be magic. After we were done listening to the first pass of these two songs played together, there was a moment of silence. And then Joey, our assistant editor, spoke up and said, "I feel bad. I do not want to be that guy." That's exactly what we were going for. That sold it. And we tried 9 different versions before we got to the one that you hear in the film. Through various time stretching and pitch manipulation, we got these pieces working in perfect chaotic harmony together. By the time we get to the end of this scene, hearing these two songs fighting with each other the whole way, you really do feel as stressed out as Jesse is.
Hi, I'm Jen Carroll, co-producer on El Camino. This is one of my favorite sets. This is as bad as we see it. This is the 4th stage of Todd's apartment. The first one being the flashback where everything's clean, and the second one being after the police search, where Judy and Ashley had brought in a forensics tech advisor, Stephen Marshall, to walk through the set with us and show us all of the things the police would tear apart, which is more than we were expecting. He told us, they're going to open up every cabinet, dump out every box of cereal, just so that you check to see if guns are hiding in them or drugs, who knows what, or money. And they would put a Post-it note on anything they opened up so that they would know, K1 for the kitchen. You see some of that on the door of the fridge, or the bedroom might say like B1. And if Post-it's on the door, it means that room's been searched already. Oh, this is one of my favorite special effects gags in the movie. Vince had written into the script that he wanted to be macro close on these ghost prints evaporating so that Jesse knew something was up with the door. And so he asked Werner in the special effects team, is this going to be a tricky thing to do? Should we look into visual effects? And they were like, yeah, very complicated, but we'll give it a shot. And then, a few minutes later, they sent us a video of our special effects technician, Bob House, doing exactly what we wanted it to look like. And it's one of those really simple practical effects. All we had to do was warm up Aaron's fingers right before we shot. And then when he touched the door, which was sort of naturally chilly on set, it created those beautiful evaporating ghost prints. Oh, this is a fun thing for people viewing the second time. Casey here in his hand has a lockpick set. He doesn't have a key. And he played it as if he were, picking a lock, so that folks might not notice the first time, but the second time they watched, they'll know that's not a real cop. This scene is one of the trickiest pieces of score in the movie because Dave Porter, rightfully, scored it from Jesse's point of view, the tension of these cops arriving. But also we've got Tom Bauer here, and he is hilarious. He's so funny that every time we shot this shot, his close-up, which turns into a close-up of the two guys after he leaves, Vince had to be, held back from running to the set because he was laughing so hard. He wanted to go and see Tom do another take. But we had to finish the shot out because the two guys still had... Well, Neil has one line left in the scene, so we'd be physically holding Vince back like, no, let us finish the take before you run out there. But I'll also say, we wanted to leave room for that comedy amidst the score of all of the tension. And so Dave ended up thinning it out a few times when Tom Bauer is talking so that we still have that levity, which is, few and far between in the movie. But we still had the tension of, oh my God, these cops are here and Jesse is trapped.
Okay. I'll start here. You start in the back.
Hi, my name's Trina Siopi, and I am the assistant prop master on El Camino. Oh, the gloves. Any actor will speak on how hard it is to put rubber gloves on. Baby powder. The secret is baby powder, but, just the right amount, because too much, it makes a cloud. Too little, and you're still dealing with the sticky. The Vominos Pest overalls, a little Easter egg there. And I actually was hiding in the closet here with the camera. Easier for resets. This is where he spots the tarantula with the awesome figurines that were actually made for a train set. People that do train collecting and things like that.
Dude's got a tarantula.
Lay down, and my favorite prop ever that I've ever had to make with a snow globe. And the idea came from Vince for Todd to have a little hobby So we started making snow globes. I kind of made them a little bit gory, and Vince kind of turned me into making them a little bit creepier, a little odd, or I should say a little odd, strange, just like Todd. You know, I did some with a stripper, and he's like, "Oh, well, let's put a fishbowl in the strip with the stripper," you know, things like that. And we have Jesse with the Ruger P85. He's gonna take the Glock 17 from our fake cop, and you can see the encyclopedias there that we carved out. Myself and Claudia Azurmendi, another prop assistant, carved every one by hand. We did the whole set. This is right when he kind of figures out something's maybe not right. And he will pull out his Kimber 1911.
You find something?
Hi, I'm Scott MacArthur. I play Neil.
I'm Scott Shepard. I'm the one with the mustache.
I remember here they actually had to build an extra wide hallway because of the size of my head. But
because of the size of your head?
Yeah. Extra wide head. Always throws camera departments for a little bit of a loop.
I like that that paint peel off the wall. That's really a thorough search, you know, if you're looking for money.
Lieutenant?
The paint peel definitely gives you a caged animal type feel.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when we got to this point, we realized how fortuitous it was that I was left-handed.
Oh, that's perfect for this.
Yeah.
Corner.
Well, in the script, Vince had used the verb to Kilroy, which I'd never heard. I had to look up, and that's what it means to kind of peek your head around slightly from a corner.
Yeah, you just put your eyes over and maybe your nose.
Yeah, it goes back to some sort of shipping term.
There's a piece of graffiti, I think. You'd see that guy with just his nose over the edge.
Yeah. God, this feels like we just shot it.
Yeah. This was a very intense perspective for me. It's like,
yeah, there was a lot.
My friend gonna shoot me.
Just almost to this whole production, maybe more so than anything else I've really worked on, is once you got into these spaces that were built just so detailed and so well, and then of course what Aaron's bringing to it and the history of it, I think it made it so much easier, at least for me, maybe us, but I don't want to speak for you, to just drop into this world. And because this was one of the first scenes we all shot together.
Yeah. And the set, you're right, the set really, you just sort of drop into it. It felt familiar from the show.
Yeah, absolutely. The world, the tone. I mean, and you're just really trusting the language that, you know, obviously, I think it's safe to say that Vince can write a script. So it just kind of starts going. I remember during one of the takes, it's one of the more intense scenes we filmed. In one of the takes, you slipped into an Irish accent, which I still don't understand why.
Did I?
Yeah, you did. And I thought it was because you were trying to break me up. Of course, I was thinking, like, what's he doing? You know, maybe, I just going
how is he going to try
dead?
to sabotage me now?
Yeah. And Aaron heard it too, so I don't know where it came from, really.
It must have really happened.
I think it did.
I got carried away with the emotion.
This moment of hog tying him, I remember after like the fourth or fifth take, Aaron said, yo, MacArthur, can you do me a favor? And I said, yeah, what's up? And he goes, can you try acting? I said, what do you mean? He said, you're really tying my hands to the point where they're about to bleed. And sure enough, his wrists had some pretty significant marks on them from the extension cord.
Oh, well, he got you back with that bite on the finger.
Yes, and then he bit my finger. He did bite my finger. It's amazing to see this all cut together, because to get that angle of Aaron's face, they cut a drop floor in there, so the camera was actually in the floor.
Right, they took out the floor, and the camera guy was waist deep in there, or maybe even deeper, shooting upward.
Yeah, I think this whole set was elevated about 6 feet.
That's right.
On risers. So for that shot, the whole camera crew was beneath us in the floor looking up, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Tom Bauer.
Just seeing you guys together, it brings such a smile to my face.
I love Tom. He's an old theater guy.
Yeah.
This scene was shot on location. So when we're inside the apartment, we're on the set, which they built. They built an exact replica of this in the studio. But this was my first day of shooting. Here I'm doing a little shifting from side to side. That's my indication that I'm not really a cop.
I see that. I didn't. You know what? It read, and I didn't notice it, and I think that's effective acting.
You can watch this scene later to study.
I will. I will break it down. I break all these scenes down for my 4-year-old son. I'm not sure he gets it, but that's okay. He's just such a great actor, and just this character. He was just so realized. It was so much fun to watch.
Yeah, it was hard not to laugh whenever Tom showed up.
Yeah.
Show me the money. I let you go.
I like this moment where you put the gun down and you talk to him like a friend for a second.
I remember when we filmed it, we kind of played it a couple different ways to figure out when the moment was to drop the gun. It was kind of the nice part about working with Vince, is that, he's so specific, but he's still open to ideas and the discovery process when you're filming it. This whole scene, actually, the choreography of this, of getting the refrigerator off and how the money was in there, and how much of the money Aaron could take by a certain line, to kind of all work, was a real collaborative effort, really, with every department.
Right.
As most a whole film is, but this in particular had so much coordination that had to really be executed. And
well, Vince was so great on set in terms of, inventing new things as he went. He really brought his writer self to the set.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's constantly coming up with new ideas to try.
Yeah. There's a scene way later in the movie. I know we're supposed to be talking about this one, but the scene way later in the movie, in the final shootout, where the shattered glass falls to the ground and it makes the 3 remaining henchmen kind of snap back and look. I remember was a in the moment idea that Vince had, and it's kind of emblematic, though, of just to always be open to what's in front of you. Even with this final moment here of Aaron slapping the gun, was something we had found while we were shooting that moment right there.
Right.
And it's really kind of it's an amazing moment to not have had previously scripted, because it's such a defining moment of where his character is in terms of an overall arc, and also just the threat level that I pose.
Hi, this is Charles Neuwirth, one of the producers on El Camino. And this scene is a great scene. I love this. This is, and I love it for one particular reason. This piece of art that just showed up there is actually a sculpture that I made that Vince knew about and wanted to put in the movie. So I was flattered about that. In any case, the set itself, you can see all the deconstruction on the walls, how the wallpaper is ripped off, how it places tossed and turned upside down. We spent a lot of time figuring that out, how to get it done. This shot in itself is unique because we did it in 2 separate pieces, 2 separate plates, where we wanted to have both of them in focus. So we did a foreground shot of the one actor and then background shot of another actor separately, and married them together. The location itself was unique because we found this location in Albuquerque. It was this very quirky apartment building. It was built in the 70s. And almost everything you see art directed is the way it was. We changed a few paint colors, but almost everything is as this apartment existed. We did build a replica of this floor and the apartment on stage so we could move walls and do what we had to do. But the swimming pool in the bottom, that all existed with no water. It was a filled-in swimming pool. It was a really unusual, quirky location that Vince felt would really work well for the sequence. And we're actually coming up to a moment which is one of my favorite moments in the movie, where Neil, who is the fake police officer, goes up to his truck. And this is where Jesse takes a look. He sees Candy welding, and it's an epiphanal moment. It triggers him. You can see in his eyes, he is realizing, wait a second, this is something that is in my unconscious, and this guy, I know this guy. And you can see Neil react with that look in his face. Oh, yeah, you know who I am. And Jesse, goes back to that moment, which is a very painful moment for him when he was chained up in the lab. And I love this shot, which is a pull-away shot that Vince constructed. It's great because you've got this moment with Jesse. You're sort of focusing on him. And Neil enters the frame from the right. And you'll see him come up in a moment or two here. It's like, yeah. And here's the pass. It's like, hey, I got you, dude. And Jesse goes on to then figure out who Neil actually was, and takes retribution later in the movie. And that's the scene.
The voice you're hearing now is that of Sharon Bialy, one of the casting directors for El Camino, Breaking Bad, and Better Call Saul.
And I'm Sherry Thomas, the other casting director on Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and El Camino.
So here we have the incredible Aaron Paul, who Sherry and I go back with 12 years ago when he auditioned for the pilot of Breaking Bad.
I think the exciting part about Aaron was another actor, as all of them were from the pilot, that came through the process of auditioning and auditioned several times. And initially, I think the role was slightly younger than Aaron was at the time. And once the chemistry read happened with Brian during the studio and the network tests, it was unanimous and it didn't matter. And we all know the history of the role, that it was not supposed to make it this far to where there's an entire movie about what happens to our Jesse Pinkman. But he was just phenomenal, and the chemistry between the two made it work.
In the scene coming up now, you'll see the great Marla Gibbs, who is a 5-time Emmy nominee and a star in her own right. Sherry and I keep notes on every actor that's ever come into the office, and I looked up our notes and it said no ego, no attitude, off book, which means she had completely memorized her fake scene because we don't give out the real scenes due to the security. And she was an absolute star and pleasure in the waiting room. And I also remember writing down, God, I hope Vince doesn't recognize her because she has a naturalistic feeling to her, and she just becomes seamlessly whoever the character is in a scene. So you don't feel a star walking in, you feel this woman who needs a vacuum cleaner.
Mm-hmm. Because she doesn't push. The work is all just about the words. It's fantastic.
Her, like most of the actors, I think almost all the actors in the universe of El Camino and Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, they let their ego go to the side and they serve the writer's vision, and that's what makes it work.
Yeah.
And now we have the great Robert Forster. So in the history of Sherry and I working with Vince Gilligan over 12 years, he only made 2 offers where actors didn't have to read. And one of those was for Robert Forster. He had always wanted to work with him, and every season kept trying to find the perfect role for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, in the final season of Breaking Bad, he did.
He sure did.
If you watch the scene between the two of them, one of the signs of a great actor is how well they listen. And you can stay on Robert Forster even when Aaron is talking, because he is listening, is so active, and he's taking in everything that's happening. all the same time the wheels are turning in his head about how he's going to deal with this young man that's a little bit out of control. And you see some of the great nuance that Aaron brings to everything because he has a roller coaster of emotions within this 4-minute scene where he goes from anger to vulnerability to just with humor.
With the humor.
Something he was always able to bring to all the scenes he was in that no one had ever expected.
Hello, I'm David Cole, supervising and lead digital colorist on El Camino. My role in the film was manipulating all the beautiful images that Marshall Adams shot. So I affect all color and tone and mood in the post-production world. So this scene in particular is, I think, is one of the most beautiful scenes in the movie, even though it's just set in a vacuum cleaner store. There's a lot of nuance that we did with shapes and to direct the eye. The audience ultimately wants to see a beautiful image, but what we can do in post-production is actually make the audience look in particular areas, feel the emotion of the characters even more, and remove any distractions. When we started the film, we did multiple versions of it. We started with the theatrical 239, which is the letterbox version, and we really wanted to embrace that theatrical feel. The TV show was always theatrical in its scope, but now with the movie, we actually had all these tools at our disposal. So we started with that, and then we moved into high dynamic range. Now, this was the first time that Vince and the rest of the creative team had really sunk their teeth into doing high dynamic range, and that gives us so much more in terms of the palette of blacks to whites, so where your darkest darks are to your ultimate whites. And with a film like this, it really benefited from it because we had so much of the film was in night or in dark areas with flashlights or flames, and then we would go out to the desert and get burned with this hot blistering sun. So it really added to the character of the film. But HDR can also reveal things which you normally wouldn't see. So, for example, that window or the doorway behind Jesse revealed that there was flags in a neighboring car yard that were flapping, so they were distracting. So we actually needed to get them fixed in visual effects and in the grade as well, so we would not be distracted and we're just watching, the performances in this scene. Grading Robert Foster was amazing, especially in some of these close-ups that Marshall gave me. It's just there's so much character in his face, and like this scene is just so beautiful and such a fantastic thing to work on. Even that shot going down the desk has a lot of these shapes that I was talking about to really direct the eye into both of the characters, because ultimately everything that we do is at the service of the story. So if we're distracting from that, then we haven't done our job well. But if we have done it well, you are just drawn into the characters and you're drawn into the story, and it happens to look beautiful as well.
Hi, I'm Marshall Adams, the cinematographer for El Camino, and I have with me
Jake Cross, the key grip.
All right. Welcome, Jake.
Hey, it's good to be here, Marshall. How you doing?
Good. This particular set actually is one that is a carryover from the original show, obviously. So it had a look and a style and a feel already that was kind of established, as well as the location that we were obviously going to be reusing. We tweaked it a little bit, lighting wise and also set wise. As a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, when we were there on the first scout, Vince realized that back wall there had never been photographed in the series. And that allowed us to be able to put that wall back there with the windows in it and stuff, have a little bit more freedom lighting wise. But yeah, so, and obviously, trying to emulate the look that was already established by Mr. Slovis, Michael Slovis, the DP from Breaking Bad. And so we were adjusting that and tweaking it a little bit, getting it a little bit darker in some of the corners like we did here in this shot. But yeah, so that's kind of the history on the set. Jake, trying to remember what we were doing. We had nets and NDs on all those windows, right, to knock them around, try to bounce.
Yeah, it was pretty spicy outside, so we net and ND'd the windows to bring it down, and we certainly we did a little battling with the sun, reflecting, kicking off the windshields of the oncoming traffic. So I was, working with that, trying to keep the kicks from bouncing all over the set.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually see there that you can see it has a little bit of tint in the window, but worked out well. I mean, the balance is fantastic. I mean, I love that shot too. It's just amazing. And working with these guys is just such a pleasure too. It's so much fun being in there and shooting this stuff with them. It's just incredible.
Yeah, what a pleasure it was, just to, Aaron and Bob, and for me it was really special working with Bob again. I worked with him like 25 years ago on Jackie Brown, and this guy is like was the most professional actor of ever, one of the top tier brothers I've ever worked with, and 25 years later he's still A1 true blue solid.
Yeah, that was so sad when we heard that he passed away. I don't know if I ever told you, when he arrived at the set, I happened to be standing at the doorway right there as the van pulled in, and Steve, the driver, kind of pointed at me, and I said something to him, and I was wondering kind of what he was saying. Turns out, that Robert was a huge fan of cinematographers and cinematography since he was young, and worked on Medium Cool, and with Haskell Wexler, and Haskell kind of took him under his wing and showed him a lot of stuff about what the cinematography was all about, and so he's been a big fan. So he really went out of his way to find me and say hello and touch base, which I just thought was the sweetest thing in the world. Just such a pro and real sweet. Incredible.
Yeah, so genuine. Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, I actually remember the moment we were like day 3 or 4 into the movie when we were shooting that scene at the front door with Badger and Pete. At his front door. Yeah, no, it was at the practical location, and so and he opens the door and you can see Aaron. He gets close up on him, and he did this thing where he didn't move a muscle on his face, but he went from completely guarded and like, don't mess with me, to incredibly vulnerable in one. I didn't even see a muscle move in his face, and I was like, wow, we are not in Kansas anymore. This guy is just a whole different level, man. Just incredible. So good. So you want to talk about some of the car mounts that we did? I mean, I know we had some really complicated ones. Obviously, we put mounts on just about every place you can on a moving vehicle.
Yeah, it's funny, like at job to job, we start the show, and there's usually some car work, and what I noticed during prep was it felt like every day we were going out to the cars, another car, and lining up shots in all these different positions, all around the car, up high, down low, doing movement, static, everything. So it was I realized at that point, there's going to be a lot of car mounts here, a lot of car rigs happening this show.
I would say the most difficult one was that blue car, right? Was
it Thunderbird?
Yeah, right. It was a Thunderbird, but we did that whole big push in on it while the car was moving. That was just incredible.
Oh yeah, the motorized slider. Yeah,
such a fun move. I mean, it all worked in one, which was really cool. I'll never forget the day where we were in prep when Vince realized how many car shots we had to do, and he said, "I'm never writing another car scene as long as I live."
The funny thing about that Thunderbird motorized slider shot was that when we were getting that up and running, I don't know if you remember, but Charles, one of the producer, was like, "Hey Jake, how long do you think it's going to take to strike this rig once we get the shot?" And I'm like, 15 minutes. He's like, "If you do it in under 15 minutes, we bet him $400 that we could strike it in under 15 minutes." And we did it in 13 and change, and he pretty much bought me and the boys dinner. Well, is this what we had, the killing the reflection off the windshield there in Aaron's car with a 20 by overhead with a stand and a scissor lift and an extra solid and wind blowing around, and
it was, for some reason, I guess we didn't see it coming. I don't know, was the angle of the windshield or what the deal was, but boy, I'll never forget. It was like we thought this simple scene was going to be no big deal to do. And then we had to empty your truck, unfortunately, to control all of the reflections and light and everything.
Yeah, the windshield curved to the edges, and you end up seeing a lot more than just a little bit in the reflection. We had to kill it all, so it was definitely an undertaking to make that happen. But we got her done.
Yeah, right.
Hi, I'm Ashley Michelle Marsh, set decorator, and I want to tell you a little bit about Jesse's parents' house. The biggest challenge for us on the set decoration team boiled down to how could we match 2 different locations and keep the spirit true to Breaking Bad. Due to other scheduling factors, we weren't actually able to film at the original location for interior scenes. We had to immediately find a quick visual solution. The answer? These shears in the background behind the sink. In just a few scenes, when Jesse is breaking in through the back of the house, you can see the same curtain shears from the outside in the backyard. This small little trick helps your brain seamlessly put together the location without any other context. Fortunately, most viewers have already seen the background in other episodes, but these shears firmly plant where the kitchen is, where it's supposed to be. We also use the same method in the front and side of the original exterior house, using a bold maroon pattern. In terms of style choices, we wanted to continue the very traditional feeling that Jesse's family seems to portray. Classic dark wood tones, traditional lighting, traditional rugs. These are themes that can also be seen in the original interior on Breaking Bad. In the interior of Breaking Bad, they sat at a round dining table. So we matched the same type of table, but moved it to the foyer. For the art choices, with Jesse's sly maneuvering, I found it very cool to use classic Anglo art of noble fox hunting, since Jesse has certainly proven himself to be one sly fox. Also, look closely. Throughout the house, you might notice that there's very little evidence of Jesse. Over the course of Jesse's struggles, his family has almost completely eradicated him from their history. If you look around, you'll only see photos of Jake, but some things can't be removed. In an upcoming scene, you can see that they did not remove Jesse from the family height chart.
Hi, this is Mark Hansen again, just following up with some more interesting prop information.
When Jesse breaks back into his parents' house, I remember that night we had to do a big wet down. Special effects did a big wet down there on the ground, as you can see. That's the Pinkman's Prius bumper sticker, which you barely can see, was something that was established back on season 1 of Breaking Bad, which was the only season I didn't do. So to recreate that bumper sticker for just the detailed continuity that we do on the show, we had to do a lot of really close-up still grabs and figure out what it actually was. Ultimately, it was 3 stick figures, mom, dad, one son, and a dog and a cat. So that's always been a bone of contention for Jesse because he was left off the bumper sticker. There's Aaron Paul, a fantastic actor, super sweet guy, really just a pleasure to work with. He looks intense, but as soon as he finishes his take, he's a pleasure. He's cruising around the Pinkman house, and we shot this exterior was one location, and then when he goes inside, it's actually a different house. So all we were doing here was establishing the exterior that was also established on season 1, and pulling up bricks. That was something we preset. He gets down there, gets the key. He walks in the house, and it's interesting. You won't see it here, but he comes back to this area because that's where the phone book is. We spent a lot of time picking the phone that goes with the phone book that ultimately we didn't end up seeing, but I think I brought probably 30 different vintage phones for Vince to look at, and everything from a duck phone to a Mickey Mouse phone to I think a bunch of sort of period orange and green phones. And I think we ended up going with an orange wall phone for that. Jesse going to the safe. This is a safe that we pre-rigged. It's a push button safe that we set up so that Jesse literally could push any combination of numbers and it would open the safe up, just to make it super actor friendly. That's one of the things where he doesn't need to be thinking about a number. We can just let him push any button and it'll be gagged to open up. The hatch itself did not stay open in real life, so that's another thing we did to help the actor. And also Vince wanted it to where it was sort of framing him out in a special way. The two guns that he picks up, Jesse's dad is not a gun guy. He just happens to have a couple vintage guns. The one in his left hand was an old revolver, and the one in his right was an old World War II 22 caliber. They call them pea shooters. And it was a very specific gun in Vince's head that he wanted.
Hey everyone, I'm Dave Porter, composer of the original music for El Camino. And in this scene, we have Jesse having just left his parents' house in tracking down Neil Candy. And as Vince and I discussed this scene, we talked about how it's very much an offshoot of the scene which precedes it, where he does visit his parents' house and gathers the guns from the safe, leading us towards an inevitable shootout to come, as we all know. And this moment is very much about the tension building as we connect the dots here between Jesse at his parents' house and him sneaking into the property owned by Neil Candy, who has the money that's going to be necessary for him to escape. So the first part of this cue is very much about a connection of tension to the scene before. And now you'll note as he drops into the yard here, the music changes and it moves up a notch, but also changes considerably to leave a lot of space for the listener, because as Jesse approaches the office here, we need to hear what Jesse's hearing. And as Jesse puts together what exactly it is he's up against. His goal here, of course, is to have a confrontation with Neil Candy. And here he sees an amazing opportunity. Here he is all on his own, walking out to the gate. And the tension builds here as Jesse contemplates a move at a time when he's got the opportunity to do it, but he waits a moment too long, and then the moment is gone.
Hi, this is Kira Rai, and I'm the local casting director for El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. I'm also the local casting director for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And in this scene here, Jesse returns to Candy Welding Compound so he can confront Neil and ask him for the remaining money that he still needs in order to pay the disappearer and start a new life. As you can see, he's been interrupted by this vehicle that pulls up, and Neil, Casey, and their friends greet this big, tough guy that you might remember and recognize from Better Call Saul and know as Man Mountain. He was hired to do different protecting jobs in Better Call Saul. And here he's just letting Neil know what the payment is for the strippers that he's brought them. He's their driver and bodyguard in El Camino. And a little bit later, one of the strippers reveals that, in fact, his name is Clarence. So this was a really cool and fun Easter egg reveal, and I had a lot of fun being able to bring his character back and also having cast some of the other folks in this scene.
Hello, this is Kevin Rankin. I play Kenny on Breaking Bad. And I was very honored to be invited back to the sandbox to play with these artists. They're Scott MacArthur, and I have the same manager, been hearing about Scott for years. Met him first day right here on set. A lovely guy, fantastic actor, man. Killed this role. I know Jesse Plemons there. I've known Jesse since he was 18. Worked on a show called Friday Night Lights. Never shared a frame with him, but we hung out quite a bit when he was a young man. Yeah, I didn't actually get to work on camera together till Breaking Bad. And that hair, that lovely hair you see, I actually had, my hair was pretty short there. I had to have a wig, fitted for a wig for this. I was working on another television show called Claws. And I was fitted for a wig, actually, at drop-off. I was dropping my kid off at school. One of the other students' mothers happened to do hair. And she fitted me for the wig. Wonderful, beautiful job. Yeah, I think they did a great match, you know. I think, 6 years between those. Yeah, I love the relationship between Kenny and Todd. I wish we had more of that. I just loved how he looked at Todd. I think he was a little jealous of how Uncle Jack really fawned over Todd. At least Kenny thought so. I loved how Kenny was trying to prove his point, a little bit of cognitive dissonance. He was so sold on this thing just didn't look strong enough, so he was gonna just prove it, yank on it, give that wig a test. And he's just looking there, and of course he probably has a lot of issues, and gambling is one of them. So he's just looking for anything to gamble, or a reason to step up into Scott MacArthur's face. This was shot over 2 days. This scene, one day was a lot colder than the one before, so we had we could just see our breath every time we took a breath. So Vince was brilliant. Had to take a drink of some cold water, swish it around before the scene, spit it out, or swallow, depends on who you are as a guy, and then you do the scene, and you couldn't see your breath. It was great. Yeah, Aaron Paul, this guy, he's an athlete. He was catching some air. I think I was throwing in some Peter Pan lines. Didn't really make it, but Jesse just has such a genuine nature in Plemons' work. I love it. I love it. Kenny's willing to take it to the next level right here. Yeah. He's a pep talker. See, I think he could have been a coach, could have been some sort of motivational speaker, whatever gets your motor running. I do know that I think Vince might have brought it up, there's Walter White's handprint, bloody handprint is still on one of these little canisters in here. I loved playing Kenny. I was shocked to get the part in the first place. Shocked to be invited back. Shows how little I think of myself. So there you go. There's a nice gift for everyone to know. Lovely people.
Hi, my name's Katie Galo, and I was the second AD on the film. So I actually love this scene because it was my first time to ever rush call in a beetle. We weren't supposed to have the beetle this day, and we got the beetle in. Our animal trainer Kip was great. But then we also had the fun beetles hibernate in the winter. And then we shot this in the dead of winter in New Mexico where it was cold. So we actually had to have heaters all around the set so that the beetle would move. And then I love this shot of Aaron. I feel like you can see his makeup really well, that Sherry and Laverne did so well. Those scars took him about an hour, and it just got better and better throughout the entire movie. Also, this is a visual effects shot, which a lot of people wouldn't know. Truly, the girls are standing inside like a sort of a storage space, and they're just walking out now. The girls were also troopers there. It was freezing when we filmed this, and they did not complain once. They're also improvising all their lines right now, and it truly just got funnier and funnier each take. Vince is an amazing writer, but this was hysterical.
I'm never coming back to this dump place again.
I love this cameo with Big Dave because it goes to Better Call Saul, which is always a nice nod. Our biggest fear with him was that he wouldn't fit in the Hummer, but he did. So that was good. And then this is actually on a technical side, a big lockup for us because the warehouse across the street was open. So that means I needed more people all the way down that street and some in the warehouse just for safety to make sure no one came out. All right. This shot always reminds me of Aaron's leather jacket. Big part of his character, big part of the movie. And I think we had about 13 to 14 different versions because his jacket's about to go through even more than what it already has. Now we get to our boys. The good thing about the scene is that we had a rehearsal. We were actually able to bring all of them in, including the girls, to have a rehearsal one day after we filmed, which is a rarity. Because this many people in that tight of a space, it was really nice to be able to block it. The guys also are improvising here, and they got into their scenes more and more each time. And the Scots, we love them. But yeah, this was the start of a big 4-day shoot because it's about to get very technical after this.
My name is Doug Coleman. I was the stunt coordinator on El Camino, Breaking Bad movie. I had the privilege of working with Vince Gilligan and learned so much from him. This is a piece of business where we are in the Wild West. It's a showdown where two guys are going to draw on each other for the prize.
Oh, yeah?
And the way Vince builds the tension in this scene is just amazing. With the camera work, with the close-ups of the eyes. The close-ups of the eyes reminded me so much of Martin Scorsese and Cape Fear and some other things that he's done. It takes me to these epic scenes in movies. It's really it's used so well here.
Oh, he's got one now, doesn't he? So, yeah.
I love when they walk in. These guys are they're partying. They've been with women. They're doing cocaine. They're drinking, and then zip, music stops, and here we go. The actors that are in there, I've worked with a few of them. I had the pleasure of working with Scott Shepard. He's playing Casey. I worked with him on Hostels. Had to kill him on a movie called Hostels with Christian Bale. I got to work with Brendan Saxton. He was on 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Had a lovely scene in that with Frances McDormand. And Aaron Paul. Aaron Paul, what can I say? What a pleasure it is to work with Aaron Paul. He wanted to do most every stunt on this film, which he did pretty much everything. It was pretty incredible. He's very talented. He's very physical and smart. And he's certainly not going to do anything that's above his head, and he realizes that.
What is that? Let me see that thing.
In this piece, in the shootout, we had to prep and we had to prep the doors and the floor with padding. We just wanted to take all the precautions that we could. We also did some gun training, so everybody knew what it would sound like in that environment and what the guns would be doing. So we'd look at safety on everything we do.
I'm gone forever.
But it's a pretty bold move for this guy to walk in by himself into a room of 5 guys. It's pretty cool. Gosh, what else can I say? Like I said earlier, we had to prep the door. This piece of business where he walks up and shuts the door reminded me and took me back to a movie called A Bronx Tale. Robert De Niro directed it. And it's a piece where these bikers are in a bar, another showdown, and Chaz Palminteri walks over and shuts the door to lock them in, even though it seems one-sided. And it took me back to that, just that door shutting here. It was really clever. The shots of the twitching fingers, the shots over the holster onto Aaron's face, Jesse's face. So cool. Again, the tension being built. So as the shootout happens, Jesse shoots through his jacket. What we don't see in this particular clip that I'm involved with is that his jacket is on fire where the bullets left the the leather. So there's a couple scenes after this that his jacket's on fire, which was really cool. It's a great idea. These shots are just incredible. Over the holster, tension building. Aha, so here we see a third party who may get involved in the gun battle, which he does later. The tension is just incredible. These eyes shots, this is what takes me back to Martin Scorsese, Cape Fear, so many other films, The Aviator. Those tight shots just build. And here we go with the third party, part of the shootout. Casey is diving, running, shooting, and bam, right in the head. Into the vending machine he goes. That was done by Jimmy Hart. That was the stuntman that did that part of the sequence. Other than that, it was all the actors.
Hi, I'm Werner Hanline, the special effects coordinator on El Camino. This shot consisted of rigging squibs on people and on glass, on couches, on desktops. A lot of that gets buried in the background. We had squibs rigged on Neil, the character, and we had bullet hits front and back. We had a bloody sponge rigged on his back, so as he slid down the wall, he left a nice big skid mark. We show all that to Vince prior, and he decides how much blood, how much spray, how much drip. So we always want to make sure we're on the same page when we come to start shooting. As far as the glass goes, we had double squibs rigged on every piece of glass because we don't want to have one single failure, because that would be a reset, and reset takes a lot of time, and filming is very expensive, and we don't want to waste an hour trying to reset and clean up and do this again when we could have got it right the first time. Go. What we do on that jacket there, we make sure we fireproof the jacket so it doesn't catch fire. Then we put a little bit of fire paste on there. We tested this with Aaron, and he was fine putting it out with his bare hand, which was very cool. As this glass fell, we had some of those rigged. The very first take we did, one fell on its own, and Vince loved it, so then we had to kind of tie that into the rest of it. As Jesse's leaving, we see that he's thinking about it, so we know that he goes back inside and pre-rigs something to kind of shut this place down for good. What we see here, when Jesse has an idea to head back in, what he's trying to do is give himself some time to exit the premises before Candy Welding gets a major remodel. And what we did there, we take a non-flammable welding tank and we remove the top so no pressure can build up and the heat can escape. And then we just have to make sure we use a nice clean spot every time on that tank for as many takes as we need. What normally happens is the largest special effects gag is the last shot of the night. So that kind of gives us all day to rig it, but we're rigging this while people are still filming, so we got to keep everything safe. And then by the end of the night, we've all been doing this for 12 hours. We're all pretty tired, but we still have to make sure everything is safe. When we rig something like this, the hardest part is that it's a practical location and we can't damage the building or any of the surrounding buildings.
This is Melissa Bernstein, one of the producers of El Camino, and I love this scene. I love how this scene starts, and I love how we're wondering, where is Jesse? When is he dead? Is this the afterlife? Is this a dream? Is this some other timeline? What's happening? And it's really fun to catch up to. This is a set that we built on the stage because motel rooms are just too small to shoot in practically. I love Aaron's performance here. I love just seeing Jesse unburdened and happy and with hope and possibilities ahead of him. I love that sign hanging on the door. It says, "Shh, somebody's dreaming in here," which is pretty funny. Now wait for it. Who is behind that door? But the one and only Walter White, which I love. What we've been wondering, would this happen all movie long? And I love how long this moment lasts. It's beautiful. Just seeing them walk together, sharing no words, I think is very powerful. I think there behind our guys is Tia Brown's grandmother, I believe. Tia is one of our amazing PAs. Here we are at the Owl Cafe with our RV, with our bullet holes taped up with our duct tape. We are here at this amazing diner that Vince fell in love with. He fell in love with the commercials featuring Ski Martin and one of the wonderful waitresses, DJ. Jesse is bringing a heaping plate full of pineapple here, and it turns out that Aaron Paul is allergic to pineapple, but he doesn't let anything stop him, so he started packing his mouth full of pineapple. After that first take, we found that his mouth was swelling, so our amazing props team had to problem solve. They ended up finding some jicama and dyeing it yellow to make that work. Walking away is Johnny Ortiz, our busboy with a little bit of an attitude. He did such a great job. And in this diner, way in the back, you can see Mark Johnson, one of the producers, sitting with Charles Neuwirth, another producer, and his daughter Emma Neuwirth. The whole diner is actually filled with crew and the family of crew. We made this a real family affair, which was in keeping with our set ethos, and it was really wonderful to share this very special reunion with people. There's Brian Lax, one of our medics, in the front of the picture, and it was really wonderful to share this scene and this day with our close, nearest and dearest. We have Walt returned to his shaved head glory. Garrett Immel, who worked with us on Breaking Bad at K&B, pulled that look off for us. Our VFX crew at Rodeo did help, tweak it just a little bit because it's a little hard to keep the actual hair to be the poof from being seen at all. And so our VFX team helped us a lot with that. And how great that this scene is essentially, fits in our Breaking Bad timeline, essentially just after 4 days out, those events way out in the desert where they nearly die. And we see what those conversations were like after those very dramatic and memorable scenes. It's a great scene returning these two guys together, and it was a real privilege to be a part of it.
This is Bryan Cranston, and I played the role of Walter White in El Camino. It was so much fun coming back and putting on the bald cap and Walter White's clothes. It was so surreal to look across the bench and see Aaron Paul playing that character of Jesse again after all these years. I was thrilled to be able to be a part of this story, the continuation of Jesse Pinkman and what happened to him, because I too had been asked time and time again after the end of Breaking Bad, well, what happened to Jesse Pinkman? Did he make it out alive? And are you really dead? And so the answer to those two questions was, I don't know, and yes. So when Vince called me and said, are you willing to be in this film? I said, in what capacity? He said, I think we're going to have a little flashback. I actually had to brush up and go back and take a look at the scenes from 4 days out, which is where this segment comes from. Second season of the show. And God, it seems so long ago now. But to be able to have this relationship again with him was fantastic. And he did a great job in this movie. I was grateful to be a part of it in some small way. And Aaron and I owe our good fortune really to Vince Gilligan and his writing staff and being able to write these characters so brilliantly. It was almost as if we just have to just stay out of the way. Just follow the guideposts that he would write, and we just say those words and we'll be fine. And that was our whole experience really on Breaking Bad. and in El Camino. So funny to see that. All we were looking at was green screen. We had the RV out there, but it was just green screen. Magic of movies.
Hi guys, this is Nick Forshager, co-supervising sound editor.
And this is Catherine Madsen. I supervise the dialogue and the ADR.
So this scene was a scene that we spent a lot of time talking about when we first spotted the show. Vince really wanted to, bring a contrast to this scene versus everything else that had happened in the show. There was a lot of chaos in Jesse's life, through the series and into this movie, and he really wanted to bring a sense of peace and solitude to this location. It was really important to bring that message across. Vince really wanted to bring out the quietness of it. So it was really, we discussed a lot about how to deal with the silence and the quiet of being in a new location. The one thing that we really discussed was trying to, come up with the dead air, which is basically this kind of silent, kind of cold air, but not to be too distracting from everything else that was going on. And it was actually one of the first scenes that we cut and delivered to Vince so he could check it out. Pretty much we cut it, and then that stayed the way it was all the way to the end of the movie. We have a lot of new locations, but this one was really special because it was really about Jesse kind of finding out where he is and where he's going. And it's really the beginning of a new chapter in his life. And that quietness is something he's not used to. And so it's for him to kind of discover where his life is going to go. It's a pretty remarkable scene of a guy finding a new life.
I love this scene because it features two of my favorite actors to work with. Of course, Aaron Paul, who just always gives 110% in everything he does. Like when he has to come in and do his ADR, he will do whatever it takes to get the emotion back in the scene. And one of my favorite things is watching Aaron Paul turn into Jesse Pinkman. And just especially when he's doing a stressful scene, which Jesse Pinkman is in a lot of stressful scenes, like Aaron's whole body will just stress up, and sometimes even the vein will pop out in his head when he's having to do efforts and things like that. Like there's the scene before in this movie where he's down on the ground when the cops are tying him up, and we had to do a couple of ADR lines for that bit, and he would contort his body and to make those stressed out sounds, and he's just so good. And then of course Robert Forster, who is just a gem. He is just one of those old school, classy Hollywood guys. And it was such a pleasure to get to work with him on this movie. I had worked with him once before on Breaking Bad, but it was so wonderful to get to work with him again. And I don't know if everyone knows this watching the movie, but he actually passed away the day that this movie came out. He loved this role so much. He talked about, like on the street, he would get recognized for 2 roles. The first was Jackie Brown, and then Breaking Bad. Like he'd be walking down the street and people would just yell out, "Breaking Bad!" And he said it just always put a smile on his face. Oh, in this part right here, where he's reading the letter. Yeah. Oh, just that look that he gives. And there is actually something written on that letter. And in fact, I think they told me that that's one of the first things that Vince wrote was that letter from Jesse to Brock. And just that amazing look that Robert gives to show that he sees that there's more to this guy than he originally thought. Such good acting. Oh gosh, I'm going to tell one more story. Aaron was, I think someone told me, I think it was Aaron actually, that said that they did like a joke take during that scene where he gets out of the back of the truck or whatever. And he did this joke take where, at the beginning of the film, Mike had told him that he should go to Alaska. And Aaron did a joke take where he gets out and he's like, "This is Alaska?" And then he goes off on what a bad suggestion it was from Mike. And apparently it had everyone in stitches.
Hi,
This is Kristen Ritter, and I played Jane in El Camino and Breaking Bad. The final scene of the movie, seeing Jesse ride off into the sunset with Jane shotgun and still very much in his heart. This was such a thrill. Oh my God, just getting the call to come out and play and be a part of this amazing project. Getting to step into these roles again with Aaron and riff with each other. Really just one of the most amazing things. We filmed a longer improvised version of the scene. Just this day could have gone on forever. It was so amazing to be with Aaron and Vince and back in these roles. I think as a fan of the show and a fan of this character, seeing him be sent off in this way and Jane be a part of it is just so major.
Hey, it's Joey and Diane again. We're going to talk about some end credits.
End credits, so exciting.
I think this might be the chunk of the movie I've seen the most.
I would say yes, that you and I have seen this a lot. As we were working through the editing of the movie, it became so clear to us that this was a Western, really, truly a Western, down to the, gunslinger shootout. This is a Western. And so we kind of took the elements of the car, the idea of the Western, and we were inspired by the El Camino, the badge of the El Camino car. There were several different versions of that. Vince kind of gravitated towards one. And Joey, you made a 3D version of it, right?
Yeah, it was just based on the actual emblem from the car.
Right.
It was just to see how it would play.
Yeah. And Vince immediately gravitated to that. And so we took that as our inspiration, and we worked with a graphic designer at our post house. His name is Chris Hyatt, and he works at Keep Me Posted, and he's worked with us for years. And so he took Joey's design, and then he created a few different versions of these cards for the solo credits. But somewhere Chris got the idea to take the stripe from the car and incorporate that, because I told him, we were talking about the whole Western idea of it, and so he had the idea to do that kind of paper damage look.
Mm-hmm.
And
the distressing.
the distressing. And then he didn't even initially show me the red stripe version. Then he showed it to me, and immediately I was like, that's it. That is so cool. And I do have to thank General Motors for that, because they did have to approve us using the El Camino badge as the actual title card of the movie, and they were so kind to let us do that. And I think the end result is pretty cool.
Hi, I'm Thomas Golovich, the music supervisor on El Camino. You're listening to Static on the Radio featuring Amy Mann. It's a song by Jim White. Jim had an interesting role in the Breaking Bad universe. He was an artist that we talked about really early on when we were first trying to figure out the tone for the show. Jim is a guy who actually went to film school at the same time as Vince Gilligan at NYU. He's born in California but raised in Pensacola, Florida, and has a very similar sensibility to Vince in a lot of ways. His lyrics are very cerebral and twisty, and his musical inclination is very much towards kind of a tweaked Americana, which was a natural fit for Breaking Bad. We did have a hard time finding a home for one of his songs. In fact, it was all the way in Season 5, Episode 9 of Breaking Bad before we were able to find a Jim White song that kind of helped to tell our story. We featured his song Word Mule in a scene when Hank figures out that Walt is actually Heisenberg. So when it came to coming up with a song to close out El Camino, we kind of had a feeling that Static on the Radio had finally found a home. It was the right spot for it. It had the right emotional tone. It has sort of a wistfulness and a softness, and at the same time it's sort of reflective. It felt like the right feeling as we close out Jesse Pinkman's story, and it just kind of took us out of the credits in a really nice way. getting the song to actually fit into the sequence was a little bit more tricky. Our music editor, Jason Newman, who performs miracles on a regular basis, was able to find a way to kind of trim elements of the song and have it land in a way that we were not going to step on Dave Porter's score, which was closing out the previous scene, and have the music come in right as the credit kicked in. It's a delicate balance, and Jason Newman, as a music editor, is always very graceful and thoughtful in how he finds ways of magically making time compress in a way that you don't notice the music, but you really feel the music, and that's always our goal as we're trying to make this happen. Also in this very personal film for Vince, this is a film that Vince wrote and directed, and we knew in many ways that this was going to be very much a personal expression for him. We were able to kind of celebrate that with a few artists from his hometown of Richmond, Virginia. In the sequence in the movie where we have Walt and Jesse hanging out at a diner, we are included two songs from Richmond artists. One of them is the Jarmels, A Little Bit of Soap from 1961, and also the local legends Ron Moody and the Centaurs, and a song, If I Didn't Have a Dime, which was recorded in 1969. Both of them play in the jukebox in the background of the scene, and they paired really nicely with Lulu's To Sir With Love to kind of close out that whole sequence. The Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and El Camino universe is very much a family affair. We are tremendously lucky, and we've all been working together for a long time, very, very collaboratively, and it is always an exciting adventure. Whenever Vince calls and says, I got a new idea and I want to talk to you about it, I think all of our hearts start to beat an extra step and are very excited about the adventure to come. This was no different. We had tremendous resources available. We had time. We had an incredible script from Vince, and obviously what he and the team put together in the finished film is just spectacular. And I think all of us in the post-production team were so happy to kind of lend our efforts and add a little bit of our own energy into it. And hopefully you enjoyed this adventure in the making of El Camino. And I certainly look forward to the next time we get a chance to share with you some of the adventures we've had in the world of Vince Gilligan and Breaking Bad. Thanks so much for listening. Best wishes.